Hello, and welcome to your Puncty Bite for the week of September 19th through the 23rd. The cold weather seems to be upon us and reminding us that we're nearly through September. It's kind of crazy. I imagine that some of you, like me, have spent the weekend fielding questions about the listeria outbreak in cantaloupe, and it left me with some questions as well because I have always associated listeria with packaged deli meats and hot dogs. And certainly in 2002, the largest outbreak in those foods was seen and left many people infected in some dead, and certainly the company completely bankrupt as a result. And so this latest outbreak was perplexing to me because I was a little bit unsure about the potential source of listeria. And it does seem that listeria, I spent a little time looking about it in the book, and it does seem that it actually is fairly widely spread in nature, but particularly prevalent on decomposing matter, which is interesting. And it seems that the cantaloupe may be contracted or was inoculated with the listeria in some other location besides the farm itself. It will be interesting to see how that unfolds. There are also non-human hosts for listeria, so ranging, things like sheep and cattle can be host, birds, even crustaceans. So there are a lot of non-human hosts as well. So it'll be, yeah, again, sort of interesting to watch how that unfolds and very unfortunate. Very unfortunate for those of the Rocky Ford area. I used to run track meets and cross-country races there, and it's just their livelihood, and it's very sad to see this. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule for this week as we head into Labs 7 and 8. Always a fun week where we get to work with the glowing Vibrio fischeri bacteria, and then we move into our section on antimicrobial control of bacterial growth and looking at antibiotics and UV irradiation and such. So with this week, we do have Open Lab, and a quick note on Open Lab, I will be having to leave at about 1 o'clock this Friday. The John should be able to come around that time, but also I wanted Kelsey and Leslie to be aware. So Kelsey and Leslie, remember that you both will be there for Open Lab this week, or you'll have somebody to help cover for Open Lab. So we do need to make sure that there are at least a couple TAs there, being as we'll be changing the guard and I'll have to leave at 1. I'm presenting at an evolution conference at that time. So that to keep in mind. And I guess looking ahead just a little bit, please do make sure to go pick up a timesheet so that you can turn in your timesheet on time to Sandy at the end of the month. That would be absolutely marvelous. And thank you for going and filling out paperwork for her to get hired. If you have not done that, please, please, please do that and get that done. Okay, during Lab 7, a couple of extra things that will be going on. We will be making the Winogradsky columns. So because I did give good notice to the students in lecture about those, but I didn't give as good a notice to them in lab. I think it should be extra credit. I think it's a really great idea for those people who really do a good job on it to get extra credit from that effort. We don't necessarily have to tell them that until we've seen who's gone through it and done it really well, but we'll see how many people come through with the mud and pond water. So hopefully a lot of people will do that. Also remember that the unknown press release is due on Tuesday, followed by the dilution problems, which are due on Thursday. Keys for both of those can be found on your TACD in the grading key folder. So please take advantage of those keys to help you to get through the grading on those questions. Also, please note that on the dilution problems, on those problems where students are able to make up their own scheme to dilute the culture, there is certainly more than one right way to do that. If they don't do it the way that I do it in the key, that's certainly fine as long as it works and they get between 30 and 300 colonies on their plates. So there's certainly more than one way to approach that question, and it's good to be aware of that. Okay, let's look at the TA guidelines first for Lab 7 and then for Lab 8. For Lab 7, I will take care of getting the the tables and such on the board, and I will also make sure to draw a picture of the T-streak. You should be aware though that the students should be seeing two different kinds of colonies. There'll be a smaller yellow colony, such as the one that's in our punctibite heading here, which is the Micrococcus luteus. There will also be a larger white colony that will be present on the plate. That's the Staphylococcus aureus. So they may be differentiating between those two colonies. They can choose either one of those to restreak. So they will be restreaking to ensure that they have a pure culture at that time. Also, during Lab 7, they will be doing their Pipette Man tutorial. So as I'm taking groups back to look at the glowing bacteria, would love to have your help with getting the students through the Pipette Man tutorial. And if you want to help them with some of the questions, show them what are some of the problems with letting the pipette pop back up. What are some, difficulties if you don't touch the tip of the pipette to the receiving vessel? What problems can that cause? Reminding them that they are working with micro volumes, and that's a little bit different situation than most of them have had in the past. So that's our Lab 7 lowdown. Those of you who are doing the lecture for Lab 7, there is a lot of information in the TA guideline, but if you would also like to read through some of the review articles that I mention here in the TA guidelines, please let me know. Feel free to stop by tomorrow or at some point to take a look at the publications for maybe a little bit of extra to give in your lecture. Now, I know I'm generally giving that lecture, but if somebody did want to do it, I'd want you to be sure you felt good about it. Now, I guess we'll look at Lab 8 for just a moment and talk about some of what's happening there. One note on this one, please, even returning TAs, double check your lecture because I have simplified this lecture so the lecture is changed. However, if you would still like to review some of what's noted in the TA guidelines at the beginning, for example, on wavelength, how energy relates to wavelength and whatnot, that would be a good addition. I just felt that it was confounding the lecture and making it hard to really get to the meat of the lecture. So I've definitely shortened that. But still, there is a lot of information in this lecture, so it doesn't hurt to get familiarized with it and let me know if you have any questions for those of you who are doing the lecture on that day. One thing that really helps this lab go much better is if we assign each bench to a different task to start with. So if one bench can start with UV irradiation, which is in the back of the room, that would be great. If one bench can start with the Kirby Bauer, which is over on the west bench, that would be great. So then that way we never have a backlog at any one of the stations. Also, please plan to have one of the two TAs stand by the UV irradiation station because I want to make sure that the students are taking the lids off their plates so that they get a good exposure, but also that they don't get good exposure to their hands, eyes, or whatever it may be. So just for safety, but as well as, making sure that the procedure is going well. Okay, I think that's majority of what I had for you this week, and I hope to be in touch and let me know if there are any questions, and always feel free to reply to all on this email if there is anything to clarify or to add to what I've mentioned for the week ahead. And I hope everybody who went to the Contagion movie had a really good time, and thank you, Kelsey, so much for doing that. Also, thank you to those of you who did extra work to help me with the grading of the exams. The exams went really well, and the grading process was, certainly just helped an immense amount by having Leslie and Richard, and of course you can send this message to Kristen as well. Thank you very much, and make sure I get those checks to you. All right, see you this week.